recognized for 1 hour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the purpose of debate only, I'd like to yield the customary 30 minutes to my good friend from Florida, Mr. Hastings, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, all time yielded is for the purpose of debate only, and I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, House Resolution 778 is a closed rule for consideration of 2 bills, H.R. 6365, which is the National Security and Job Protection Act, and H.J. Res. 117, which is the Continuing Appropriations Resolution Act for FY13. You know, Mr. Speaker, I'm a freshman on the Rules Committee. It's a good committee to be on. I enjoy it. I get to work with learned members like my friend from Florida across the aisle, but it falls to me to handle continuing resolution bills. And as you remember, when we showed up at the beginning of 2011, there was a lot of unfinished business from 2010, and we went right into continuing resolution after continuing resolution after continuing resolution, sometimes 2 and 3 weeks at the time. That's no way to run a government. It's no way to have a Congress. My friend from Florida and I disagree on a great deal of policy, but we believe that a deliberative process yields better results than the right here, right now, hurry up and wait kind of mentality that this body so often adopts. And so what we've done here today with this bill, this H.J. Res. 117, is to say we understand that the appropriations responsibilities of this Congress have not yet been completed. The Constitution gives this Congress, not just this body, but this Congress, the responsibility of providing appropriations for this nation. Now, as the Speaker knows full well, this House has set about getting its business done. We divide those appropriations bills up across a number of bills. You know, the Commerce Justice Science Bill passed this House with a bipartisan majority, went to the Senate. The Senate had no floor action whatsoever. You know, Mr. Speaker, that the Energy and Water Bill passed this House with a bipartisan majority, went to the Senate, and the Senate did nothing with it whatsoever. You know that the Homeland Security Committee passed this body, again, bipartisan majority, went to the Senate. The Senate took no action. I can go on and on and on. The Ledge Branch Bill, the Military Construction Bill, the Defense Bill, on and on and on. And so here we are. We don't have control over the Senate, Mr. Speaker. We only have control over what goes on here in this body. And I got to tell you, I'm proud as a freshman that we set about getting our business done, and one deliberative bill at the time, one open rule on appropriations bills at the time, we allowed every member of this body to come to the floor, to offer their amendments, to have their voice heard, and produce the very best work product that we could produce. And I might add, Mr. Speaker, we did that at a funding level even lower than what the American taxpayer asked of us in the Budget Control Act. I'm very proud of that work. But in the absence of the Senate taking action, Mr. Speaker, we have to move on. The American people are going to have a referendum in this country. They're going to have a referendum on what fiscal responsibility means. We're going to have an election in November. New House members are going to come. New Senate members are going to come. The administration may change. We're going to have that opportunity for all of us as citizens to speak out in November and choose a path for 2013. But our business today, Mr. Speaker, is making sure the doors stay open moving into 2013. As my colleagues know, in the absence of action, Mr. Speaker, government offices begin to close on October 1st of this year. One by one, national parks, veteran services, Social Security services, Medicare services. That's not the kind of governing responsibility that we all swore an oath to uphold. So I'm pleased to be here today, Mr. Speaker, to bring this rule to the floor to say, yes, we have gotten our work done in this House, but we have been stymied by the leadership in the Senate that has not scheduled votes on these bills, but we will not allow the American taxpayer and American citizens to pay the price of inaction by the United States Senate. We will make sure that government services continue until this great referendum that this great republic will have in November. This is a 6-month continuing resolution, Mr. Speaker, and it will solve that need. This rule also, Mr. Speaker, provides for consideration of H.R. 6365. It's called the National Security and Job Protection Act, but what it is a sequester replacement bill. I mean, you remember, Mr. Speaker, I don't know that I've ever been more disgusted in my 18 months in this body. We came together here in this House in a bipartisan fashion, we passed the Budget Control Act, which gave 6 House members and 6 Senate members, 6 Republicans, 6 Democrats, 12 members of this Congress, esteemed members of this Congress, talented, bright, conscientious, America-loving members of this Congress, an opportunity to look at our entire budget, not just the $3.8 trillion that we'd spend this year, Mr. Speaker, not just that $3.8 trillion, but next year and the year after that and the year after that, well into the 3-generational window, hundreds of trillions of dollars these 12 men and women had an opportunity to look at to find bipartisan agreement. About 4 months they worked on that project, Mr. Speaker. And you know how that story turns out. After 4 months of labor by 12 of the brightest, most conscientious members of this body, 6 Republicans, 6 Democrats, 6 House members, 6 Senate members, looking at hundreds of trillions of dollars in tax expenditures, in social programs, in taxes and tax cuts, agreed on absolutely nothing. Not $1 out of hundreds of trillions did they come together on. That was a tremendous disappointment. Now, as you know, Mr. Speaker, in order to try to bring agreement to that body, we passed legislation that implemented what they call the Sequester, to say if, against all odds, this Joint Select Committee were to fail, candidly, it was not on my radar screen that they would. This was a solemn responsibility. These were talented members who were assigned to it. But if they were to fail, we would implement automatic spending cuts that would achieve the kind of budget reductions that every American knows that we need. The problem in this town is spending, and the Sequester said we will not fail on this opportunity to address it. Well, that Sequester goes into effect in January of next year, and hardest hit will be the United States military. Again, this was a device that was put in place not because folks thought it was the best policy in the room, but to be there as the hammer to say, surely this 12-member committee, this Joint Select Committee, will come to the agreement that will bring us back from this fiscal cliff. Well, they didn't. Now this Sequester hangs over the head not just of the United States military, but over Medicare, over social programs. Now again, Mr. Speaker, I'm just so proud to be a freshman member of this House. This House said back in the spring that is an unacceptable outcome. It was never intended to be the outcome. No one ever desired that it be the outcome. And we can change that outcome. And so we passed a Sequester replacement right here in this House that went into mandatory spending programs, which is where the real problem is on the budget, as we all know, and said let's replace the Sequester that may harm defense cuts, that is going to deal with our military, that's going to put our national security at risk, and let's replace those with spending reductions that make sense. Again, we passed that in the House. The Senate's taken no action whatsoever. And I don't mean to suggest, Mr. Speaker, that they've taken no action on our bill. They most certainly have not, but they're under no obligation to. It's the right thing to do, but they're under no obligation to. But they are under an obligation to do something about it. They are under an obligation to stand up and listen to the same constituents that my colleague from Florida and I listen to say there must be action. We must prevent this tremendous threat to our readiness, to our troops, and to our troops' families. This bill, co-sponsored, or introduced actually in this body by Colonel Allen West of Florida, gives us an opportunity to do just that. And again, in the bipartisan, open-minded way that I think has characterized the 18 months that I've served in this House, because of the leadership of folks like you, Mr. Speaker, it doesn't say you have to use the House-passed bill already. Was it a good bill? Absolutely. Is it the right answer? I believe that it is. But what it says is, use the House-passed bill or use something like it. If you can find a better plan, if the Senate in its wisdom can find a better plan, that's going to work too. It's not our way or the highway. It's that we know there's a right way and a wrong way to deal with our budget challenges, and we want to do it the right way. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of this rule. I rise in strong support of the two underlying provisions as well. I look forward to the debate on that this afternoon. We're going to be able to debate these individually, which I believe is the right way to handle these questions of this magnitude, of this importance, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Florida.